and yet it gives him that feeling that you could really relate to him now.
All the actors and the director and cinematographer, everyone's on the same page that it needed to be this old school style, but with contemporary acting in the sense that like we wanted to be truthful.
And it kind of made me think like I think we all have a certain past or a certain things that motivate us, and oftentimes we're motivated to do things against our will, you know, like because of the suggestion of someone else or the demons that plague our lives or whatever. And I think Cesare is kind of the embodiment of that.
When I first met David, one of our discussions, of course, was, well, what composers are your favorite composers? What are your favorite movies? My favorite composer is probably Ennio Morricone. Right up there is Bernard Herrmann. David's big into Bernard Herrmann. The first thing I felt it needed a good melodic theme to pull you through it, and so I came up with this idea of something that would be kind of longing, and if you listen to the melody, it's constantly trying to rise and then falling, and then rise and then falling, like life where you're going 2 steps forward, 6 steps back. And so it can be kind of ominous and yet somber at the same time, and it's about insanity. So there was whispering, and I started just layering things. But then also the thing is, with the look of the film, it's a very classic traditional movie in a lot of, you know, in the basic style of it. Even though the sets are completely flipped out, it's still shot very, you know, here's your story. It's very standard kind of classic storytelling, and I felt it needed like a traditional element. So I hired the section quartet to get some live strings on there and give it a good foundational orchestral vibe to it. But for this, basically the process went, David and I talked about a bunch of things. David played me some music that he liked, but it was never to picture, it was never like a temp score kind of thing. It was like he'd pick apart things in a mix that he liked, and that creeps me out, I like that, and you know, things like that. And then we talked about more the guts and the heart and soul of the movie itself, so I had that to go on, and then I was pretty much like let free.
We went into the project knowing that most of the ideas that I had were very experimental, and when we got the footage into the computers, it's when we first realized that this was, you know, far beyond the expectations that we had in the first place.
After principal photography, all the footage was digitized to a central network. Each scene was then edited and overlaid with backgrounds taken from the original film, something never before seen in the history of filmmaking.
When I first started working on the Cabinet of Dr Caligari, David Fisher and I spent about 6 weeks just developing a specific look to the film. I would take the edited green screen scenes that David had finished and bring them into the compositor and start dropping in the original backgrounds from the 1919 film. So once our rough composites were looking good and we were able to move some elements around, move actors this way or that way to set up our compositions, we then began to go back and refine each element, really define the background, the foreground, and also create a depth of field. Since all of the lighting was pretty much very just bright and flat because it was shot on a green stage, David and I were able to do almost all of the noir lighting actually in post digitally to create those nice pools of light that we wanted. On the green stage, there really weren't nice shadows in the original footage, so we actually ended up creating all of the shadows for the characters throughout the film. We were able to project their image and use that as a shadow and animate it along their motion path.
I'd come down on week 1 of a month, and I would look at the progress, and come down at the end of week 2, and it would be exponentially better every week. And throughout the 10 months, I just kept wondering where this was going to go.
I come from the video game world, so we've done a lot of green screen and a lot of compositing. And so the process was really something I was very familiar with.
In working on this film, I think I've really been able to be a part of something that hasn't really been done before. The idea of placing new actors in an old place, and the wonderful sets from the original movie. And that really just has been very satisfying for me, both technically and creatively.
The final production is a composite of multiple elements coming together. The surreal and fantastically twisted sets from the original film, coupled with talented actors of today speaking dialogue that never existed in the silent version, create an original revisit of this diabolic masterpiece.
And I think the actors were so absolutely incredible because they combined into a set of performances that now seem timeless.
The Cabinet of Dr Caligari, David Fisher's version, I think it is clearly a homage to the original. I think it more than pays tribute. This is probably the closest talking version of a remake, a remix, that anyone could ever make.